Monday, March 23rd. It is episode number 174 of Sunday Golds, a Florida State baseball podcast. Aria Masudi, Brett Nevitt, back on the YouTube, back on X, live, and breaking down a big weekend for the Noles against a top 10 opponent at Howser. Do want to thank our sponsors, Alumni Hall and Metro Deli. Those of you listening on Apple Pods, Spotify, Google Pods, wherever else you may get your favorite podcast, we appreciate you joining us on that as well on demand. Please subscribe to the podcast. Please give us 5 stars if you can. Leave us a review. All of that matters. It helps the algorithm. And if you could share this with your friends, we'll keep growing this podcast together. Could be a pretty special season here in Tallahassee for Florida State baseball, who's now ranked number 10 in the country after taking 2 of 3 against NC State. Those of you watching on YouTube, please subscribe to Brett Nevitt's baseball channel, like the video, leave comments. We encourage you to be a part of the show live if you're watching right now. Leave your comments. We'll try and include it on the live video stream. And those of you listening, if you want a way to watch, you have a way to watch now, Sunday Golds on YouTube. All right, Brett, I think we've got a lot to get to in this one. I think we got to start first and foremost with, I saw a lot of Noles fans out there, 5,000 plus for the 3 games, a lot of different Noles gear. Do want to remind people that Alumni Hall has 15% off of your entire order for apparel if you use the code SG15. Again, SG15. Let them know Sunday Gold sent you, and if you go in store, they will give you 15% off, or you can use that code online, and they'll give you 15% off your entire order. Brand new jerseys are dropping. I see the vintage collection starting to drop around there, and all the different things that Florida State baseball is doing in terms of gear and all the different things you can do to go to Howser and look your best. I do want to also thank, again, Metro Deli for being a friend of the program, metrodeli.com, metrodelitally.com. They're on South Monroe Street down there in downtown, and they've been awesome to us, and terrific food, a terrific lunch spot. And I know Johnny Mack and the boys were excited to see how Florida State played this weekend against a really good NC State team, Brett. And when you think about what the Noles were able to accomplish from a 30,000-foot view, right, a bird's eye view, plenty to get into on the nitty-gritty and how the weekend ultimately evolved. The Noles now have 2 marquee series victories on their resume.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You can't take, no matter what happens the rest of the year, you can't take those series wins away from FSU, and I think we expect certainly at least NC State to be a good team this year, and I think we expect the same out of Wake Forest. And like I talked about last week with Wake Forest being on the road, you can basically guarantee those being 3 quad 1 wins. I would expect that NC State is probably in the range to be a 2 quad 1 wins, despite, being at home. The rankings the way they are, they make it tough in RPI for home games to be quad 1 games. I think it's the top 25 teams in RPI. So NC State will probably fall into that bucket. So, potentially you can lock in 5 quad 1 wins through 2 weeks of ACC play, which you probably needed after the way that Texas went, and not being able to grab a couple there and probably taking maybe a couple of quad 1 losses out in Texas. So you've been able to kind of erase those and really kind of start to build a nice little resume to start the year in ACC play. And, you're really starting to build some confidence, I think, too, especially with certain guys in certain parts of your team. I think you can feel pretty strong about, while also knowing that there are certainly things that could be and need to be improved upon at the same time as well.
Yeah, and I think you and I have been adamant and consistent on the fact that seasons do evolve, right? And no team is the same in the middle of March as they are in the middle of May. And a lot of teams even change from May to early June. And lineups, the way it's constructed, the health of your team, the way defensive alignment, the way pitching staffs, weekend rotations, bullpens, those all change because baseball is a marathon and not a sprint. And I think I'm always reminded about that with MLB, right? And you just have to kind of ride the waves of the season. No single weekend is damaging if you lose it, and no single weekend is that rewarding if you don't build upon it. And I think this weekend for Florida State, I was curious as to how they would respond, to use a football term there. I know it's not friendly in football right now, but how would they respond to Wake Forest and having success and winning 3 games on the road against a good team, having a target on their back? What would what would that look like for Florida State this weekend against NC State? I think NC State was hungry to come in and prove to college baseball that they were ready to be elite this year, and they had a robust record and hadn't had a ton of tests on their season, so to speak. But Brett, they had an athletic lineup. I thought 3 really talented pitchers, and it's a good ball club that makes noise every postseason. And I thought, you saw that in elements. They took game 1 from you 6-4, and then FSU comes back 11-5 and 15-5 to take the series. And on Sunday, winning in run rule fashion. I thought the response was great, man, especially with the way you felt like Friday you might have kind of aided NC State's victory in the series with the way you fundamentally played the game late, and to be able to dump that in my mind and come back Saturday, Sunday and play, to me, some of the best baseball. It wasn't the cleanest baseball, but to me, some of the best baseball, especially with the sticks that we have seen from this group this year.
Yeah, I think there was definitely a lot of frustration coming out on Friday, just, not just from fans, but also from within the team and the coaching staff, just feeling like maybe let one get away, and then knowing that you would have to grind through the rest of the weekend against a really good team, and knowing that you'd already used kind of your ace out of the pen in John Abraham. I think he threw 67 pitches that night. So, might be down for the Florida game as well moving forward. But, yeah, I think Saturday, I don't even know if you would qualify as Saturday as playing winning baseball, but you found a way to power your way through it and go win a game against a good team and against a good starter in Duden. And then on Sunday, I think you played really well and just showed up in a massive way. And obviously, when you come out and run rule a team like that, you run ruled Wake last Friday as well. To be able to run rule teams like this is pretty impressive. And it's the second straight Sunday as well. You've come out and scored a lot of runs, which is what you need to do on Sundays, because runs are going to be scored on both sides. Even though I think at this point we feel pretty good about more, but I think you still on Sundays feel like that's when the most runs are going to be scored. So as an offense, you need to come out there and set the tone. And Link was super complimentary of the offensive effort and the full team effort on Sunday. And that's maybe the most proud he's been so far this year. I haven't been at all the pressers, obviously, but you don't often get Link as excited as he was after Sunday. I think he was really, really pleased with the effort that they got, and not just during the game, but like how they felt going into it in pregame. I think they felt like they had a lot of confidence going into Sunday, and then it showed up on the field throughout that game.
It did. And I think, jumping out to an early lead was important in game 3, no doubt. Brian, let's talk about game 1 for Florida State, because Mendez comes out and, not the best stuff we've seen from Mendez. I thought he competed his tail off the way that you expect West to do. And, he didn't have his fastball life that we're accustomed to seeing. I thought the changeup was okay, but good enough for him to be effective, at least the first time through the order against NC State. And, ultimately the Noles lose that game 6-4. Ups and downs in that one, right? I mean, Miles Bailey gives you the lead in the game with a big moment in the 5th inning with the 3-run homer, and NC State comes right back. That lineup for NC State, they are dead set on not striking out. That is something that they take into the DNA of their philosophy at the plate. And I think you saw that, right, man? I mean, they definitely choke up with 2 strikes, try and put the ball in play. Florida State's defense is not their strong suit. And I think NC State probably knew that in their scout coming in and their game plan of, if we can put the ball in play, we might have a pretty good shot of creating some chaos and winning some ball games with the way that we have speed and athleticism in our lineup. But I thought that one was still there for the taking late in the game. And I think you had 2 on, right? And Anderson Nance is on the mound, who has struggled for NC State in his last couple of outings. And, he seemed to be wobbling a bit, and you couldn't lay down the bunt the way that you wanted to. They said the slash play was on because NC State charged. And I think Chase had his opportunity and then I think lost confidence in that at bat. But that ended up being a tipping point for you in that ball game. I think it was it the bottom of the 8th?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Yeah, I think that game, like I said, it was frustrating. It was frustrating to watch. I think in every single phase, at least at some point, you got pretty frustrated. I think on the mound, like West, there was one mistake specifically. I think that the slider that he hung to Bargo, I think that was pretty early in the start. Like that was one that I think he'd want to have back. And also just after Miles' home run, just you'd probably want to have back the start of the 6th inning and the way that went. And I think John just left a couple pitches up. So I think it was Rhett Johnson who got him both times for both doubles he gave up. But outside of that, he was really good. And then, yeah, offensively, you left runners on and you struck out a lot, and a lot of those were strikeout looking. 9 of them were looking, so that was pretty tough to watch at some points. And sometimes the zone can move around, but I think at some point you just got to adjust to the zone and at least get the bat off your shoulder and fight, because it felt like at a certain point that the strikeouts looking were just piling up like crazy in that game. And then not being able to get the bunt down or not being able to execute the slash play in the 8th, and just how that whole inning went, it felt like you were really picking up momentum when you got the first 2 guys on, and Howser was really starting to get pretty rowdy, and all of a sudden that just kind of deflated really quick. And then you give up a run in the top of the 9th, and then the bottom of the 9th ends really quickly, and it's like game over. After it felt like 20 minutes ago you might have been kind of taking that game back into your own control. And it felt like too, when Miles hit that home run, like, there you go, that's what really breaks it open, and you feel like you start to kind of run away with this game. But the way NC State plays, they got themselves right back into it. So yeah, there was a lot in that game. I mean, a lot more positives the next 2 days, but within that one game, there was a lot of like stuff that, kind of when you were leaving the park, it was hard not to forget about and hard to kind of wipe off the table. But luckily you were able to go out there and play the next 2 days the way you did. I think with West specifically, the velos kind of have been a little perplexing. Like last week at Wake, it's like 92, 95, touching 6 with a dominant fastball. And then, this week at Howser on the board, it's mostly 91, 93, down to like 90 by the end of the outing. A lot of 90, 91 at the end of the outing. So just kind of, intrigued to see how that continues to go, because that was something that, the last time I was at Howser in the preseason, the last week of preseason, I talked about how Wes's velo kind of at the end of his outing dipped as well. So it's just been a little confusing to me, because it's been up and down, and it seems to be kind of coming and going. But at the same time, I was impressed that Wes was out there in the 6th inning and starting the 6th inning, had only given up 2 runs to that point. Obviously, the 6th inning didn't go the way he wanted to, but I think last year that's not an outing that West makes it to the 6th inning in. So I think that was something that was a positive, at least, to take away from it.
Yeah, and I think that's the part, right? The competitive nature of Wes, allowing himself to navigate when you don't have your best stuff. And I think when he makes it to the pros, there's going to be days he doesn't have his pitches, all of them especially, and maybe only 1 or 2 for that day. And he's going to have to find a way to still give you a chance, right? And give his team a chance, whether that's with the Knowles or whoever down the road, whatever MLB team he's representing. It was good to see that growth from him. I didn't think he was awful, but I didn't think it was the best. Clearly, we saw what it can look like last week against Wake Forest when he's got 5 pitches for strikes and he's able to kind of get into a groove. Yeah, Brett, I mean, the 8th inning, it hurts, right? And you get a couple guys on, and that place is coming to life. And then, the 9th was the error in the 9th that allowed NC State to get 1 more. Was that Fisher?
Yeah,
it was the first of what was going to be a pretty rough weekend for Fish defensively. But, you felt like you gave one away in that game, like you said. I was told after the game, Link Jarrett really had a heart-to-heart with his group in the clubhouse about, some of the coaching that has been going on and really gripping onto some of the concepts offensively. Namely, he can't miss the fastball. And that was something that Florida State was not on time with, was the fastball, which I think then has you second-guessing yourself with the secondary offerings, and that can turn to strike 3 looking, right? And it's that was something they did a lot better the next 2 days against this NC State team. And I thought Florida State did a really good job at the plate over the next 2. One bright spot for me out of the Friday game in game 1, and I think we can parlay this to Purcell as well in game 2 against NC State, but Abraham and Purcell were simply electric. I mean, 7 2/3 innings combined, 5 hits, 1 earned run, a walk, and 11 Ks. they ate a lot of pitches for you and they got a lot of outs, and you're going to need those two. We know what John Abraham can do. The question Friday night became, how long do you let Abe go? Do you let Johnny go 2 innings, 3 innings, 30 pitches, 40 pitches? He ends up going almost 70, and it was because you were within that one-run game and you're trying to walk NC State off if you can for a late victory. You end up burning him, like you said, Brett, after 67 pitches, but it was important for him, and we do know what he is capable of doing. Purcell is the one that if you can find a second arm that you really believe in out of that pen that can come in for a 1 or 2 inning spurt or go the distance, right, and be able to extend a little bit the way Purcell did, that's a development on your season. And Brody looked much more like when we saw him in his first go round. And I know he's been dealing with the oblique, and it's given him some issues. And anyone who follows baseball, I've never hurt my oblique, thank God, but those are not easy injuries to come back from, especially for a pitcher. It can really nag you for a long, long time. And I remember Chipper Jones at the plate for the Braves would have oblique issues, and he couldn't swing the bat for months, and he'd be out for months and be on the IL. So I can only imagine how annoying that must be for Purcell trying to throw a baseball and be at the top of his game. He looked good, man. That's the Brody Purcell you want. I thought fastball, good location at the knees, elevated when he needed to, and then the 12-6 breaking ball off of that was really dynamic. Talk about those two guys for me, Brett, and what that means for the rest of the season for FSU in the bullpen.
Yeah, I think John, outside of like 10 pitches he might want back in that outing, and most of those just the first couple of batters he faced when the inherited runners that Wes left on were able to get in. I think there were just a couple, it was either changeups or sinkers that he just left a little bit over the plate, I think, against left-handed hitters. But outside of that, mostly exactly the same as what we've seen the rest of the season from him with the pitch mix, just, full pitch mix with the fastball, changeups, the sinker, the cutter, the curveball still in there. And it, struck out 6 guys and only walked 1. I think the walk was pretty early on the second guy he faced. And then Purcell the next day gets a 12-ounce save for you, goes 4 innings. I think when he entered the game, they were only up 1 at the time, I want to say, and that was before Dowd hit the grand slam to kind of break that game open. But they decided to just kind of leave Purcell in there to keep it calm and let him kind of get in a groove. And that was the first time I think we've seen him extend that far out to 55 pitches. I think that might have been a career high for him. I don't remember going back in the game logs at USC last year and seeing many outings where he went that deep. I feel like they were more so 1 or 2 inning outings. And we know Link likes to extend his relievers. We know he likes to use these guys as like 3 to 4 inning shutdown arms. And if Purcell is able to do that, that gives you, a second pretty good option right behind John. And, Bradley Smart was asking me on during Saturday's game, like, who would be the number 2 option after John? I said it's a good question. Like that's something that needs to be answered. And I thought, Purcell gave you a pretty strong answer on Saturday for moving forward, that he could be that second guy for you out of the bullpen that you really trust. And I think we thought he could be that. It was just, like you said, coming back from the oblique, it hadn't been exactly the same as that first outing we saw to begin the year. But seeing him do that against that NC State lineup, I thought was just something that gives you a lot of confidence for what he can be in ACC play going forward.
Yeah, and it's important for Florida State because I think you need more than just Abraham and Purcell. I think 2 more names need to emerge for you in that to try and help you out. So who are the other 2 names you feel like that could step up right now? Obviously, Manka's down, but at the moment, there's got to be some other options.
Yeah, I don't think the other options probably need to be Stokes and probably Kevin Meeble, because he's the left-handed option for you right now. Peyton Minka was listed as out this weekend, and I did not really observe him throwing this weekend. I don't believe. He's out for the time being. So, Meeble was a little not the sharpest to begin his outing, but did end up getting the double play to end that game with the mercy rule on Sunday. And And we talking to each other on the phone yesterday. Both noticed that he popped a 95 at some point within that outing, which caught my eye. I don't think we have seen that personally, you or I, in the times that we've seen him, whether that be fall preseason or within the regular season. So I think this stuff is kind of ticking up to what they were seeing in kind of the bullpens that they saw in summer, which led to him committing. So I think if you can see that stuff continue to tick up, it excites you a bit more in that for that left-handed option. And then, we've talked about Stokes numerous times. I'm sure we'll see him tomorrow against Florida since he didn't pitch this past weekend. I think he'll definitely be one of the guys that's hot and ready to go tomorrow, and someone that you hope to see behind Cooper Whitehead, who's going to start that game for Florida's release. But yeah, I think those are probably the guys still at the top of the list for me. And I'm sure the other one we'll see tomorrow is O'Leary as well. I wouldn't be surprised if they would try to go Whitehead to O'Leary to Stokes or Meeble somewhere in there as well.
Yeah, and I those are some names I think when we look at this thing in May and we start to turn the page to postseason, you need at least two of those names to have given you some confidence to bring them into the game. And I know Manka, hopefully he gets healthy here soon and he can be back in the mix from the left-hand side. But Meeble, in the meantime, like you said, flashed to 95 and seemingly does have the stuff to be able to hang at this level with this type of hitting. I want to talk Bryson more, and then we can get into some of the nitty-gritty of game 2 and game 3. Trey Beard, I thought, was okay. The changeup was electric, and it got him 7 strikeouts. But NC State did a really nice job of working to get him out of the game by just riding the pitch count up and staying alive with foul balls and choking up and trying to slap the ball around. And really the game plan I was told going into it, I can say it now that the series over. But that's what Elliott Avent and Chris Hart wanted to do, just find a way to get Trey Beard out of the game. So they did that, got the Seminole bullpen, but Purcell was namely excellent. So more though, to me, I think is shown, that he can really help you on the weekends, especially in game 3 when he comes out pumping 95 with the fastball and the breaking ball off of it. Super impressive. And last weekend against Wake Forest, Brett, I think you saw the ceiling of what your weekend rotation can be with the way that Beard and the way that Mendez pitched against the Deacons. I think this weekend you saw the floor, right? How high the floor would be if Moore is able to do what he was able to do for you and get you into the 6th inning of a game against a top 10 opponent.
Yeah, I think it's the 4th straight week that Moore has worked into the 6th, or has worked past at least the 5th inning. He's gotten 5+ innings in 4 straight starts and given up 3 or less runs in each of those starts as well. So when you're getting that quality from your Sunday guy, I think it just relieves a lot of pressure off the whole entire staff, the rest of the staff. And, that helps you a lot going into the midweek. And, when you're kind of just always in line, it doesn't feel like you're always kind of, working from behind when it comes to guys being overwhelmed with pitch counts and stuff. And it also helps when you're, having a lot of run rules and you're ending games early and you're not having to throw 9 innings every game. I was looking at it earlier today, and I think they're averaging just under 8 innings a game pitching wise. So, they've been saving a lot of innings, but a lot of that has to do with the weekend rotation. But Moore, was the only one that gave up less than 4 runs this week. I think Beard, only one of them ended up being earned though. But Moore, I think there weren't too many swings and misses in this start, but it just felt like for the most part he was filling up the zone. I think he walked a couple of guys late that kind of inflated what the stat line looked like. But I think it was, who was it that was able to get him out of that inning? I think it was Kinnear who might have came in, or I don't remember exactly. No, Kinnear relieved Beard. Nard got him out of the 6th there, and the 7th inning go Nard's way, but he was able to get Moore out of the 6th and kind of limit damage for him. But yeah, I think I like the way that Moore's throwing the ball and the stuff. I think he was 93, 95 basically the entire outing. I don't think, I think the velo dropped below 93 on the fastball just a couple of times. So You feel really good about, where the arm is at for him right now.
Yeah, and there's things that FSU's got to be able to do, I think, on the mounds to be able to I think mitigate some of the issues they have in the field. And some of that is if you can get strikeouts of guys, that allows you to do some things. But at the plate, Brett, let's talk a little bit about the plate, because offensively you were able to have some big moments with this group. But namely, I thought Miles hit 3 home runs on the weekends. And then Dowd and Paulino were really good too.
Yeah, Miles obviously having a really good week overall. I think he had 4 homers on the week, had hit 4 homers in 4 straight games at a certain point before getting walked intentionally 3 times on Sunday and kind of getting the Barry Bonds treatment on Sunday. And Shmelia came through behind him, but Miles just incredibly impressive all the time. Just the way he's able to hit the ball, the 1 home run, 117 miles per hour. I think he's got to be in like the 99th percentile for max exit velo, 90th percentile exit velo, average exit velo, hard hit rate, all that stuff. And I think, the strikeout rate at this point is below 25% on the season as well. So it just feels like Miles is incredibly locked in, and just someone that you feel like you can rely on to come through in clutch moments all the time. And it just gets to a certain point where every time Miles comes up to the plate, you feel like you got to be paying attention, because you just feel like he's going to hit a home run. Like, it just, every time he came to the plate this week for me, I just felt like he was going to hit a home run. And when you go and watch his BP, it's just kind of crazy. Like, I just don't think there's many guys in college. I just don't think there's anybody else in college that can do what Miles does when it comes to the power. Paulino continues to swing the bat really well. I think his hit streak is up to 10 games at this point, hitting over 400 on the season. Hit his first career homer on Sunday, which was pretty loud. I think 105 exit, 410 feet. So it was really good to see him get his first. And I think, that might lead to a few more for him and kind of just open it up. Dowd continues to swing it well. I think his OPS is above, 1,100 at this point of the season, and he's second on the team with 6 home runs. And really had the biggest swing of the weekend, and it really felt like it kind of changed the entire series. Like, it felt like there were 2 different series within the one. Like, it was, before that swing and after that swing, because it just kind of changed everything that was going on and swung the momentum completely in your favor, and you were able to run with that on Sunday as well. Nate was really good behind Miles on Sunday, 3 for 3 after the 3 intentional walks. I think he drove in 3 runs in those opportunities, had a pair of doubles. One of those doubles was like 109 exit velo. So he just continues to swing it well. And I think he's on a 7-game hitting streak overall. So, Nate is someone who at this point has fully deserved the opportunity to stick in the lineup every day behind the plate because of the way he's played. Yeah, I think there's numerous guys. I think Stetzer back-to-back days had 3 hits, I want to say, between Saturday and Sunday after having a tough day on Friday. And Link on Saturday and Sunday, he did something that he talked about before the season, was stacking the runners and getting Chase back in the lineup and having him at 7. I thought Chase looked better. I know he only had a couple hits, and obviously the 8th inning on Friday was not good, and he did not get the job done there. And that was part of the reason why that game didn't go the way you wanted it to. But I think they have been working pretty hard on him with the swing and trying to keep the feet quieter and try to keep them more in place rather than, he was just getting pretty loud and moving around in the box a bunch. And I think that was really just kind of what was, giving him a bunch of trouble at the plate. And it seemed like he kind of simplified things this week. And there were 3 or 4 balls that he hit pretty hard that the first ball he hit on Saturday almost had a chance to get out of the park. So, and he had another one to the backside to the warning track as well. So it was good to see him get back involved and put some good swings on it. And Cal did have a pretty tough defensively weekend, especially on Friday and Saturday. But, I thought the at-bats on Saturday and Sunday at least felt like he was fighting back. And I thought you saw that in the emotions that he was showing when he was just getting hits. Like, I don't think we've seen quite that much emotion in a Cal in a while. And I felt like it was just kind of him just kind of starting to break out a little bit. And I know it wasn't a huge performance, and he did have a struggle at short, but to see him just start to kind of fight back and get going a little bit, I think is at least, some signs of hope.
Yeah, I do. I think he had some better at bats for sure. I worry about the defense because it's as the games become more important later in the year, you're just not going to be able to get away with some of the mistakes that Cal is making in the field at what is a premium position, right? Like it's not like you can hide it at second base a little bit or in right field, but at shortstop, like those errors, you lose ball games that matter. 6-4 loss against NC State in a super regional, probably backbreaking, or in Omaha, right? Or you can change the name of the team out for whoever you want to play out there. I really would like to see them make a change at shortstop, and I like Cal a lot. I really think he's a captain and he has a good attitude about him and he plays the game hard. And I still think at the plate he'll figure himself out. But that at shortstop's not going to work for you at this level. Like it's not going to get the job done. If your goal is Omaha and to win a national title, that's not the type of shortstop play you can have and get away with it. It's not going to work. FSU has seen bad shortstop play before. Before Link got here, when Meat was here and even 11 had some terrible shortstops in the 2010s. Like, I don't want to name names and get people all pissed off at me, but I think the fans watching know who I'm talking about. There was a handful of shortstops that cost Florida State in Omaha multiple times. Balls through the legs, throwing the ball to, into right field. Lodis is as good as it gets, but you got to find something, I think, even if it's just a tick below, you can't have it be 10 notches below what Lodis was. And I don't know what that answer is. And I'm not advocating for Cal to not even be in the lineup, whether that's Bavaro comes out at third base and you move Cal to third base back to where he's comfortable. I do think there's value in having his veteran leadership in the clubhouse and in the lineup, but that can't happen. You got lucky Saturday that some of those errors didn't turn into a 3-run homer, right? Like against a Drew Burris of Georgia Tech or Von Lackey, who's going to probably make you pay in a way that really hurts your feelings. And if we're going to we got to be fair on this podcast. I mean, I think everyone knows how much I love this program and how much I love getting to call the games, but you got to be fair. That's not good enough. Like there was a spiral happening there too in those games that it was just kind of like, dude, you're melting down in front of everybody on, at this position. And, they weren't even difficult plays. Like some of them weren't difficult plays. They were just, the one that he's running in deep into the hole, it's an easy play to scoop it and throw it to third for the force out. He sped himself up and he kicked it. And then that type of stuff can't happen. So I do think that is a red flag at this point for FSU is your shortstop play defensively. Now, what do you do there? I have no idea. I don't know if you have a better option. And that could be why Cal is still at short. Frazier hurt himself and was out for a while with the wrist. So I don't know, Brett. Like I don't know what the answer is. And I know we've got comments here that are asking, what should we do? And yeah, here you go. I won't say the name, so I'll let the YouTube comments tell you some brutal names that were, going on. But like it's hard because he's one of your captains too, like that's a very difficult conversation to have with one of your captains. Yeah, I'd move him to third. I would give it a shot. Bavaro's done a nice job. But I do think Cal is better than Bavaro at third as well. And I think you can find an answer there at shortstop that meets the eye. Maybe you do give Frazier one more crack at it because that athleticism is real. It's a plus athletic profile that Frazier brings to the table. And I don't know. I think that's going to be something to me that comes, that and defensively catcher is bad. It's not good enough. Like there are some serious issues between Carnes and Shmela of just keeping the ball in front. And, we watched Drew Lanphier this weekend, who's hitting 200 at the plate for NC State. And he looks like MLB catcher back there, back picking and staying in front of balls. And he's got a rocket arm to second base and throwing back to first. But yeah, man, I would love to see Cal get extremely hot at the plate because that's going to be important for him, to me, to stay in the lineup. So, yeah, good sign for him. I was happy to see him smile. I thought he made one of the plays of the weekend. Again, if we're being fair on this pod and keeping it level, I thought he made one of the plays of the weekend running from first to third on the bunt from Dowd. I thought that was incredibly high IQ by Cal to be able to beat Sherman Johnson to the bag at third and slide there. And you could see the emotion. You could kind of see I don't want to say it's the monkey off his back, but it almost seemed like a weight was off his shoulders when he made a positive play for the team. And I think the rest of the game for him, you saw he had some good at-bats there too. So we'll see of what's going on with shortstop. I think Paulino, man, come on now. That's as good as it gets at the plate in terms of pure hit tool. I mean, he's ridiculous. 95, 96, he can get his hands inside of it on an inside fastball and shoot it down the line for a double. He hits his first career home run, 3-run home run in game 3 that I thought kind of let NC State know they were going to be in for a long day in that finale and in that rubber match. He's on a 10-game hit streak. Yeah. Can Paulino play the field? Maybe. Does that open up some opportunities for others at DH? Maybe. But clearly the coaching staff has gone through this process, right, Brett? And they feel like what they have out there is the best combination of defense and offense put together. I mean, I think that's the only explanation I have is they've tried a bunch of different things, and this right now is the one that gives you the best chance defensively and offensively combined, right? If you're putting that equation together to win ball games. I mean, you can't complain with 5-1 in the ACC. Despite all the issues defensively, they are still winning ball games.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. For right now, it is probably still the best group you can put together, I think. Do I think this is going to be the same group at the end of the year? Probably not. I think you'd probably think the same way. Like, it just feels like it's going to continue to change. And whoever is performing the best is going to be in there. But, I think for me, going to the park on Saturday, it was like, if Cal still is short today, I don't see what at that point is going to change. I don't see what could happen from there on out to change him being your shortstop. And then, kind of was a similar defensive effort on Saturday, and he was still your shortstop on Sunday too. So I think for me, it's just, are you willing to put anybody else there, or are you just going to kind of ride it out and hope that Cal gets out of the slump and finds a way to at least make the routine play consistently? Because I think that's what you expected with Cal at short. I do think that we spoke about the range was going to be limited, especially compared to last year, not just with Cal, but with the entirety of the middle infield, because, I didn't think Putnam helped them much defensively this week either. I just felt like for the most part, your middle infield was hurting you defensively, not just on the balls that they were getting to, but also the ones that they weren't getting to. There were multiple balls within Beard's outing that were weakly hit that turned into hits that you felt like someone could have gotten to up the middle, but nobody did. I think there were a couple in Wes's outing as well. So just being at the angle I was in the press box, it just felt pretty obvious that there was a limited amount of range on FSU's middle infield, and that the things that weren't showing up in the box score that I thought were going to show up this year were showing up when you played a lineup like NC State that's going to consistently put the ball in play and going to consistently put pressure on you for the most part, because you can hide a lack of range when you're just striking out the world. But once teams start putting the ball in play and have some guys that run, that's when some of your weaknesses can get exposed. So, yeah, it'll be really interesting to see if Frazier will get back involved at some point, because I definitely think he has the best athletic profile of the infield group, and he is available right now. Link was asked about him on Sunday, and all he said was he'll be back in there at some point, and that was the full quote. So, what is the willingness to get other guys involved? What is the willingness to put Paulino on the infield? Link was working pretty hard with Paulino at third base on Sunday. I was watching him during BP work with Paulino over there and really trying to get him to let the throws, let it eat really with his arm and see what that looked like. But at the same time, like Bavaro really hasn't done anything to me to be like he needs to come out. If anything, I've been just really impressed with how he's handled it. Like, I don't feel like at any points that Bavaro's overwhelmed, especially for a freshman, and especially for a freshman that really wasn't expected to be, a part of this every day at this point, this early in his career. And I just think, he's consistently put together quality at bats. There's going to be some here and there. Like, there was a 3-pitch K at some point that was really bad. There's going to be some here and there that are like that. But, for the most part to this point, like, I don't feel like Bavaro is someone that has done anything to get himself moved down to the lineup. So, I think it might take someone like him faltering for Frazier to get back in there. But because, we already saw Fish struggle on Friday and Saturday, but that didn't lead to any change. Whereas in basically every other case with anybody else this season, if they've had a game or two like that in a row, they come out of the lineup. So it just seems like they're going to stick with their captain, and that's how they're going to ride it out.
And I want to reiterate, man, I love Cal. Like, I've gotten to know Cal over the last couple of years in his time in Tallahassee. Arguably my favorite person to talk to in that dugout because of he's outgoing. He's got a down to earth nature about him. He's a ton of fun, Brett. He's a good kid, comes from a great family and plays the game. He plays the game really hard. He really does. And he cares a lot. I just think he's really good at third base. And, we've had this conversation in the preseason, Brett, where I talked about if you have a above average third baseman, it does stand out defensively. Someone that can take away runs from an opposing team and extra base hits, that I value that personally, right? And to me, Cal really would give you a plus defense at third base. And maybe this is an unfair situation to him right now, where it's, they're asking him to play a position in the footsteps following Alex Lodis, and some of that's maybe carrying over to the plate and the plate carrying back over to the field, and you kind of got him, domed up in the head, right? And he's all in his own head right now and trying to work his way out of it. I've come on this podcast many times and said, we know what Cal can do. We've seen it at this level in big moments. He has come through and delivered for this ball club, multiple seasons in a row. I just also know that at shortstop, that is a premium position that you cannot really hide once the games get bigger and bigger. And we'll see, again, as the season evolves, how that goes along. Shout out to John Stutzer, another freshman who's making decisions difficult in the outfield, right? You've got Delamalier, Sheffield, and Stutzer who can all play out there. Chase Williams as well. Stutzer had a good weekend at the plate, 6 for 12, a couple of doubles. He made good adjustments on breaking balls on the outer part of the plate. You can see why Link Jarrett loves this kid and what he's going to become as a baseball player once he plays this game every day and gets the repetitions for 2 or 3 years. The upside is incredibly high, and I still think I'm a little worried about the base running. There's still a little bit of a mental checkout on the base paths for Stutzer at times, and you don't want to see that happen in the postseason. But you got to give the kid his credit. He's been good, and he's played well in right field and in left field for FSU this season. The speed and he's run some good routes in my opinion too. He's evolving and rounding out into a really solid piece for this group.
Yeah, for all these freshmen that you have right now, I think you're fine with the freshman mistakes because of how much impact they're also giving you, and you probably hope that they learn through the freshman mistakes and don't make those by the end of the season, and that's why you're playing them so much right now. And Stetzer, I thought, had really good at-bats on Saturday and Sunday after having not so great at-bats on Friday. There were multiple times where he came through with 2 outs. I think on Saturday and Sunday there were multiple times he did that, and there were also multiple at-bats where he came through with 2 strikes and was able to just get enough and muscle some balls into the outfield for base hits. And you also see him use his athleticism at times, and he's been able to handle both left field and right field well, I think. And yeah, you do want the base running errors to be cleaned up. I think that's 5 outs made on the bases to this point by Stetzer. So You really hope to get that cleaned up here soon. And I think you can kind of see the frustration on Link's face sometimes when they make the outs on the bases, especially when they're ending innings and getting them out of innings and big innings that are happening. But it's hard to be mad when he's going 3 hits back-to-back days, and also playing pretty good defense out wherever you put him out there in the outfield.
Yeah, he's done a really nice job. Shout out Shmela. He continues to hit the baseball, 7-game hit streak. These are from your notes, Brett. 11 for 28 in that 7-game span. A couple of home runs, couple of doubles, 7 ribbies. And you know what stood out this weekend? When he got the opportunity to protect Miles in the lineup and they were walking Miles intentionally and hitting him intentionally, Shmela came in and, he really invited that moment, and he made NC State pay every time with a big hit, backing up Miles there in the 4-hole. And 6th-year senior, there's nothing really gorgeous about the way he plays the game. It's just kind of a throwback guy who's been around a long time. And I think the game moves really slowly for him at this point. He's not speeding himself up. I think he appreciates being in the moment, and he appreciates still getting to play college baseball in his 6th year. And, he's having fun. And, I'm telling you, it's one last ride type of mentality for him, and going to take it all in, soak it all up. If I strike out, whatever, I'm going to come back the next day, and give you my best hack again. And if you make a mistake, I'm going to make you pay. And that's what Shmela is doing right now. And been good to see. I feel for Hunter Carnes, because I know Carnes can really hit the baseball, but Shmela right now has given you a real spark over the last couple of weekends.
Yeah, Nate was pretty insightful in post game yesterday. He talked after the game. He was saying he understood why a team would walk Miles Bailey to get to him, and he was talking about Nate last year had really messed up his ankle and had to get rehab his ankle, and was going to probably miss the entire fall because of that. But also, before he could even get back from it, he was saying that he tore his oblique as well. So then he also had to rehab from that, and didn't really have live at bats until the final week of preseason, but was able to jump back into it pretty quickly because of his experience. But he is also saying that, for a lot of last year, he was thinking that he'd be working a job at this time of this year. But, he decided to come back to Florida State after just seeing the environment of the regional against Mississippi State. So just pretty cool to hear him talk about that. And it's been fun to watch him kind of take advantage of this opportunity and just run with it. And, it doesn't really feel like a fluke at this point when you have a 7-game hit streak going, and also doing it against NC State's arms and in a pressure moment as well. After a team, they walk somebody to get to you and they're specifically targeting you and have you circled as someone that they're going to go after instead. You got to come through in those opportunities, and he did every single time. I mean, Miles scored 4 times yesterday with going 0 for 1, and most of that was just thanks to Nate coming through and doing his job and doing it really spectacularly and better than you could have ever expected when you saw him in the 4-hole yesterday. It was pretty funny seeing him in the 4-hole to start the game, but Link had a gut call and was certainly right about that, and I'm sure that's exactly where we'll see him hitting again in the lineup tomorrow at Florida.
Yeah, Link pushed a lot of the right buttons this weekend, I thought, in Game 2 and Game 3, and got to give him a lot of credit. I thought he did a good job, and what was an emotional weekend, right, for him and the Jarrett family, having JT come back, and it was cool to see JT get to bring the lineup card out and trade it with Dad in Game 3, and that's a nice touch from Elliott Avent, who had his normal Elliott Avent weekend. He's one of the nicest guys in college baseball to deal with as a media and TV. And Link has told some of the TV guys and some of the media about all the great things that he did for JT when JT was playing for the Pack as a baseball player and an infielder. But Avent on the field when the games go, he boils hot, man. And you got your money's worth, I think, entertainment-wise this weekend of Elliott Avent. Could have told you that was coming at least once. I told somebody 1-3 shot that he gets tossed in these games, and sure enough, he almost was 2 for 3 getting tossed this weekend. And if you've ever seen the famous Elliott Avent spin move on YouTube, when he's getting ejected, it's pretty awesome and an entertaining watch for baseball fans. He's great for the game, by the way. I think you need characters I think you need guys like that have been around a long time, and they add color to college baseball. It's awesome for the game, and he's a really good coach, man. 1,300 wins in his career, and he's been a long time. And once you realize he's been around 30 plus years at NC State, you start to go, oh man, he's been around for a minute there. Is one of the last, traditional guys coaching in one school in the ACC. So cool to see JT get to do that. And Link, I thought, pushed all the right buttons. Miles Bailey, he blows my mind, man. The way that he plays the game, the way that he's level-headed, the way he approaches every weekend. He was scuffling a bit, right? And people were trying to pitch him inside and get fastballs in off his hands, find some spin under the hands, and really try and mess with his mind and mess with his eyes. And the adjustment he made coming back this week, it was 8 home runs in 9 games, something like 4 straight games with a home run. He made NC State submit. Legitimately, they did not want to pitch to him anymore by Sunday. And that's what the big time players can do. Brett, is when you get the Barry Bonds treatment, it's, you got Heath Andrews throwing a baseball into your backside out of pure frustration for what you've done to his ball club for the weekend. And that's been gratifying to see. And on top of that, the defense continues to be played at a very high level for Miles. And I think I'm going to appreciate how far Miles hits a home run when Miles is no longer in Tallahassee, and you start to see some of those wall scrapers from everybody else, because now Miles hits a ball 430 or 440 or 450, and you don't bat an eye. Like, you go, yeah, that's pretty normal for him. He hits him to the circus. And yeah, really happy to see. He's one of the stars in college baseball. He's become a household name. Social media has fallen in love with him. All the different, sites that cover college baseball, the social media accounts, they know when Miles Bailey comes up. And, Brett, you were back at Howser for the first time this weekend in a while, and you could hear the place get silent. Remember when his walk-up song plays and he starts to make his way to the box, people stop what they're doing to watch this guy hit, and for good reason.
Yeah, I mean, Miles' power is just, it's no surprise at this point. It's just unbelievable how easy he makes it look. I think the thing that I took away from Miles this weekend was just his ability to kind of log looks, or I think Link called it archiving looks, and put it in his brain and then remembering it, and then being able to use that and put it into use, not just at bat to at bat, but within an at bat. And I think, the first example of that was versus Marone on Friday. I think Marone was kind of getting Miles pretty good with the fastball, and Marone's got a good one that from his slot, kind of takes off, especially on left-handed hitters. And I felt like he was kind of attacking Miles with that early on. And then, I think that was the pitch that Miles got in his third at bat. They just drove the other way off the scoreboard. And then Duden the next day, Miles got Duden twice. And he was talking about after the game that he was remembering his at-bats from the summer when he faced Duden in Team USA camp. And I just found that pretty interesting that he was able to take at-bats from that long ago and put it into use. And I think Miles hit a slider out first at-bat, and I want to say he had a change-up second at-bat out off of Duden. So for him to be able to hit 2 different pitches off a really good pitcher, that a pitcher that also has 98 in the tank, he was reaching back for it late in the outing. I was pretty impressed with the offense overall, because every arm that NC State ran out there, like, they weren't rolling bad arms out there. All those guys they ran out there had a decent amount of stuff. So I was pretty impressed with how the offense as a whole handled them. But yeah, I was just, the thing specifically I was impressed with Miles this week was just the adjustments he was making, and how he was taking things he had seen before and putting them into use in the game.
Yeah, and he's going to be important. I think teams are going to game plan around him. That might not be the only game we see this year where he's intentionally walked that many times. I wanted to shout out Chase, because you did earlier too. And Brett, to your point, it was good to see Chase a little more compact with his swing, a lot less pre-swing movement, and seeing him get some barrels on the baseball and getting rewarded for it. I know game 3 he didn't get rewarded for the barrels he got, and Bargo robbed him of maybe extra bases with the way Chase runs there at first base, but he had multiple balls hit at 100 miles an hour or harder this weekend. And you do need him. I am a full believer in what Chase can do for you in the field and at the plate. I go back to track record, and this is also a point that defends Cal Fisher. Guys who have done it before, you have to trust that they will make the adjustments and get back into the groove that they had when they had that success. So, this is Chase, yeah, and I do trust that Chase can be every day in the lineup. He is a very, for better or for worse, emotional player. And when the highs are high, you can see that he rides those. When the lows are low, he rides those too. And I was happy to see, the ball hit the screen for him. I thought he had homered off the bat. And you could see the jubilation, right, Brett, when he slides into second and he does his dance to celebrate with the dugout, and kind of feeling the weight of the world come off his shoulders after that swing. And he's a difference maker. He can be. I think the Dodgers drafted him in the 19th round out of JUCO for a reason. It wasn't accidental. That's one of the best scouting departments in the world when it comes to baseball scouting. And the Dodgers saw something in Chase they really liked. So, yeah, I do trust Chase. I'm curious as to what FSU does, because I do believe Brody can really help the team too. In right field, obviously we've seen Sheff get hot this year, and what Sheffield can do at the plate that can help you. But it's going to be hard. It's going to be probably, I saw a comment earlier on YouTube that really it could just be riding the hot bat for much of the season. I think Josh Martin, you're right. It probably will be until at least the month of May, when you want to get a settled lineup, is riding the hot hand and the hot bat, so to speak. So, any other things stand out to you at the plate this weekend, Brett, that you want to touch on before we talk UF and round 2 against the Gators?
I was just going to add, Link specifically said what you said and what we have said a couple of times, both on Friday and Saturday after the games. He said, we need Chase. Like, we need what he can give us. And like, I asked him about stacking Stetzer and Chase on Saturday, and he was like, that was exactly what we wanted to do. We want to have those two guys together and see what those runners can give us. Like, when they're both going and when they're both getting on base, that can get really, really exciting. But yeah, you do need Chase too. I think if he can give you some of the swings that he gave you this weekend consistently, like, the average is going to tick up for him pretty consistently. But the biggest thing is you need Chase putting the ball in play, and you also need Chase to execute the the short game a lot better than he did this weekend, and as a team as well. I think Dowd's bunt was extremely perfect. Every other bunt was extremely terrible. It was unbelievable how hard it was to get a bunt down, and I'm sure that was part of the reason that Link was extremely frustrated, because I know they work on it to begin practice every single day with every single hitter. Like, that's the first thing that they do. So I know that was something that was adding to Link's frustrations. The only other thing I was going to add on the offense was Paulino moving to 2 on Sunday. That was something that I think, somebody had asked us a question on the YouTube, I want to say, in the last podcast, and about Putnam hitting second. And I think I mentioned that I wouldn't mind seeing Paulino and him flip. I think Putnam was hitting 5th behind Shmalia, but I do really like Paulino at 2, and the idea of getting him a lot of fastballs in front of Miles is really, really exciting, because we see the bat to ball and the barrel skills, and just what he can do with his overall offensive talent is really exciting. So the idea of that moving forward is something that, is pretty exciting to me. I think 1, 2, 3 of Dowd, Paulino, Miles is a pretty threatening. It's a pretty, opposing threat for other teams.
Totally. It really does seem to fit Paulino, especially he's not going to be a guy that hits 10 home runs, but if he can run out 3 or 4 and hit 375 for you or higher for the rest of the year, I think you've got something there with a guy who doesn't strike out a lot in front of Miles, and then having someone behind Miles that can clean it up would be big for this team too. I do want to, I think one important note with Putnam, part of maybe why he looked a little off on, at second base on Saturday, especially, he took a ground ball off the eyeball. I mean, right off the eye socket in pregame on Friday before the series started, and it just started swelling up on him, and he had a black eye for the rest of the weekend. I'm not sure that he could completely see 100% with 100% vision for the weekend. And some of that might track. He dropped a fly ball, in right field, and he dropped, I think, a little like a lazy floater, right, from it was a little squib shot to second that hit him in the palm of the glove that he jumped for some reason. And it could just be he's not seeing it well. And I saw him after the game Saturday. It was welted up, man. It was black and blue, and they had a big old ice pack on it, and definitely not ideal when you get a ground ball right to the face like that, and it causes that kind of damage. So, wishing him the best. I hope he's healed up by Tuesday when they play Florida. But I did want to make that note as well. All right, the Gators not playing good baseball, similar to the way that things were going when they last played Florida State. They had just lost a series to High Point, almost got swept. They did get swept this time to Alabama in Tuscaloosa, and they're kind of limping into this game against Florida State on Tuesday in Jacksonville at the VyStar Ballpark, 6 p.m. It's on SEC Network Plus. There was that viral image of Sullivan looking like completely depressed in the dugout. I mean, he looked defeated, sitting in there. Ball cap was off. I mean, head in the hand and sulking, and I don't know, man. Like they don't seem like they're in a good spot right now coming into this game Tuesday. But I think if you're Florida State, you got to take advantage, right? Like this is a golden opportunity to come in, and I know it's a midweek and you're not going to have your best arms available. I'd be surprised if Abraham was able to go or Purcell was able to give you anything. Maybe an inning late if you're up one and all the the coaching staff thinks in their head, hey, we need this one. You might be able to get 20 pitches out of one of them. But I think the preference is for them not to be used on Tuesday for arm health reasons and to be ready for Duke, just because of the number of pitches they threw. But Brett, you see Cooper Whitehead gets the start against, is it Sandifer, who throws into the upper 90s with the fastball and has a wicked slider. He threw against Florida State in the first matchup as well, as I believe. I actually think the Gators might be in decent shape with their bullpen arms. A lot of them didn't throw a ton of pitches in their outings over the weekend. They were all really bad. The whole weekend was bad for the Gators, but I don't want to call it a blessing in disguise for them. They might have some more availability of their bullpen arms than Florida State might have in this matchup. But neutral site game, always a good time to see that. A lot of garnet and gold will come in against the Gators. How do you foresee this one going? Obviously, I know the fan base desperately wants this. I know how it is for the emotional state and the emotional well-being of going back to work on Wednesday to be able to say stuff to your Gator buddies. But how do you kind of project this one and evaluate this one going in?
Yeah, I definitely think FSU will be much more prepared for the velocity that they're going to face against Florida staff this time around versus last time. I asked both Miles and Dowd this weekend about just how much velo they've faced recently and how much easier it is to time it up now. And they were both talking about like this weekend, it's felt like 96 feels like nothing now. And it's just really easy to get on time with 95 plus at this point versus a couple weeks ago. And, I think that will be big for them this time around. And, Sandefur did have a really, really good breaking ball. I think he got Miles to sword one time against the breaking ball last time. And interested to see how Miles specifically makes an adjustment to how Florida attacked him last time. I think he was over 4-3 Ks. So, like I was talking about with his ability to make adjustments game to game, opponent to opponent, can he make that adjustment within this series against Florida and what O'Sullivan's trying to do against him? Will Florida even pitch to him coming off the hot streak he's coming off of? Cooper Whitehead's been throwing the ball pretty well recently. I think the first 3 innings last time out were perfect before he lost command in that last inning. So, can he get by with his stuff against Florida? Will the craftiness and filling up the strike zone be enough against their lineup? Their lineup's been struggling pretty bad, I think, and Brendan Lawson could potentially be out. I don't think his injury was a serious injury, the one that he got pulled out of the game from on Saturday, but he was out on Sunday in Game 3 of the series and didn't play. So don't know for sure if he'll be back in there on Tuesday. But, I mean, he really is their star when it comes to their offense and the one who really makes it go, and hit a homer against FSU in the last one, and one I'm sure Brody Purcell remembers based on how far it went. But, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Florida plays coming off this past weekend. You know, it feels like this has happened multiple times now in the last couple of years, maybe even the last 3 years, where Florida's coming off a really bad weekend coming into an FSU game.
Yeah, and it's interesting that. So, Brett, say again, and it's maybe because I missed it. What happened to Lawson?
He came out of the game on Saturday, and I think De La Torre tweeted that it was either cramps or maybe a hamstring or something like that. I remember seeing his tweet, but he said it wasn't anything serious. But he was out, I think, because the SEC does the injury report every day, and he was listed as out on Sunday. So he might be back in there on Tuesday, but just as a note.
Yeah, the guys that threw on Sunday, amazingly, Sandifer did pitch against Bama on Sunday and had 18 pitches, and it was awful. I mean, 1 hit, 3 runs, couple walks. You know, Rittenauer definitely didn't look against. He didn't look against Bama like he did against Florida State. He got shelled, and then so did McNeely. But all of them threw just few enough to be available to pitch against Florida State on Tuesday. So, yeah, that stinks, especially if you don't have Abraham and Purcell at all, and they do have their guys. It's not ideal for a bullpen type of game, right? I expect Sully to use 5 or 6 arms on Tuesday. We'll see what Florida State goes with. Like you said, Stokes will be available and O'Leary. You got to get an early lead in this one. I think get some momentum. Let the fans have a good time. I did see there was some rain in the forecast for Tuesday. Like it looks like it might be a wet day in Duval. I don't know what that means for delaying the game or postponing the game or how it's going to affect anything. But I do think it's something for Noles and Gators fans to take note of if you're going to the ball game. I know, Brett, you and I are both going to the game, and this is a part of your road trip, right? Up to Tallahassee, and that's on your way home. So looking forward to it. I think the Noles need this one, right? Not just, I saw some comments on YouTube that said, it's really important to win this game and it has a must win. I don't know if it's a must win. I get it. The emotional state is important, and we've talked about it, but yeah, it is a Tuesday game, and Florida could beat you twice, and that would not signal that they're a better baseball team than you. Like it's the midweek. I think Brett and I both have talked recently about if FSU and Florida played this year on the weekend, both of us would favor Florida State in a weekend series right now with the way that the programs are going. And it just seems like the Gators aren't playing for O'Sullivan. Maybe all the different stuff that's happening off the field isn't creating the culture that cultivates winning. And Florida's definitely underperforming relative to the talent level that they have on their roster, injuries aside. So we'll see. I mean, it's a rivalry, and it means a lot for social media, and it means a lot for people who have to coexist in a community together. But I don't know that if you lose to Florida tomorrow, it's going to affect your national seed chances and your chances to go to Omaha. It would be more nice to have. And Brett, if you win tomorrow, rubber match at Howser, right? You get that game 3 back at Dick Howser Stadium with the Animals, and that'll be an electric night. I think it's an ESPN2 game as well, so nationally televised. But yeah, I think pretty good episode, man. You got anything else you want to add, or are you ready to sign off?
No, I was just going to say, last time we were there in that stadium, we watched a walk-off grand slam to complete a cycle. So I'm sure something interesting will happen in Jacksonville. It usually does, but I really like that ballpark. I like going there. I think it's a fun place to watch a game. And I'm interested to see the renovations that they've made. Are they done at this point? I would think so.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a good ballpark out there. The Jumbo Shrimp, Marlins, I believe. AAA now, I think.
Yes. Yeah, I believe so.
So Very cool there. All right, Brett, I'll see you very soon. See you tomorrow in the ballpark in Jacksonville. And I think 173 is a wrap. Again, thanks for alumni. Thanks to Alumni Hall, Metro Deli. Those of you watching on YouTube, those of you listening on demand, please like and subscribe, rate the podcast. And we hope to see you back with some good news on Thursday when we do the next episode. We'll preview Duke, and hopefully the Noles have taken down the Gators, and we'll have episode 175 on that one, and maybe some good vibes there as well. For Brett Nevitt, I'm Mario Masudi, and this has been Sunday Golds.